Hello dear students of class 9th, welcome to economics class. I hope all of you are fit and healthy. Students, in this video, I shall be explaining the question answers of chapter 3rd of economics, that is poverty as a challenge. So students, in the previous video, I completed the explanation of this chapter, and in this video, I shall be dealing with the questions that are given at the end of the chapter. So let us start with the first question, as you can see on the screen. So the first question is, describe how poverty line is estimated in India. See, the whole chapter is regarding poverty, and I have already explained you about poverty line, that how in India poverty line is estimated. So all those points you have to include in your answer. So students, first of all, cut that line. So students, first of all, poverty line in India is based on income or consumption levels. A person is considered to be poor if the income or consumption level falls below a given minimum level that is necessary to fulfill the basic needs. Now students, what all we need for our survival, for our existence? So in order to determine the poverty line in India, a minimum level of food requirements, clothing, footwear, fuel and lighting, educational and medical requirements, etc. are required for subsistence. And these physical quantities, they are multiplied by their prices, and then what we get is called as the poverty line. This way, poverty line in our country is estimated. And if I talk about the food requirements, so we also have a formula for food requirements. So formula for food requirements is based on the calorie intake, means whatever calorie we consume. So students, it is different for rural areas as well as for urban areas. So for rural areas, the calorie requirement is 2400 calories per person per day, and in urban area it is 2100 calories per person per day. So this is how the formula has been made for calculating the calorie requirement or the food requirements. So this way it is estimated in India. So I hope this question is clear to everybody. See, you just have to include all the points that are required for the survival, that are required for existence, and then all those physical quantities have to be multiplied by their prices, and what we get, whatever result we get, refers to poverty line. So that amount that we get is considered as the standard or the benchmark to calculate the poverty line. So this way poverty line is estimated in our country. So I hope this question is very clear to everybody. Now students, we shall move to the next question, as you can see on the screen, that is question number 2. So the second question is, do you think that present methodology of poverty estimation is appropriate? That means in the previous question I explained you how poverty is estimated, how poverty line is estimated in our country. So is that methodology appropriate for poverty estimation or not, in your opinion? So students, if I talk about my opinion, then the present methodology of poverty estimation is not appropriate, it is inappropriate. Why it is considered as inappropriate? Because it only considers minimum subsistence of living instead of a reasonable status of living. Means whatever minimum things, the minimum criterion that is required for our survival, that is only included. Only the economic side is seen there, but the other criteria, the other factors, the other indicators, they are ignored. So instead of reasonable, it is minimum. So that minimum has to be replaced with reasonable. Students, today we have limited the definition of poverty. We need to see a wider approach. We need to broaden the concept. We need to broaden the definition of poverty, because there are advancements, there are developments. So the definition has changed. The definition has been modified. See, people may have been able to feed themselves as well as their family, but education, shelter, health, job opportunities and dignity, they are still at a threat. And these things, these factors that I told you just now, they are very important. So only the income level or the economic level should not only be considered if we are talking about poverty. That should not only be the benchmark or standard for determining or estimating poverty levels, but all these other factors also are really very important and we cannot ignore them. Only feeding oneself and one's family is not enough. There are certain other factors that are very important when we consider about the proper or broad definition of poverty. So in order to overcome the situation, the points or the factors that I just told should be taken into consideration. Then only the situation will improve. Otherwise, only calculating, only estimating poverty on the basis of the income levels or the consumption is not enough. So all these points should be taken into consideration if we want to really estimate poverty, eradicate poverty actually. Alright. So I hope the second question is clear to everybody. Now students, we shall move to the third question, as you can see on the screen. So the third question is, describe poverty trends in India since 1973. So you need to describe the situation of poverty, regarding the poverty ratios, regarding the number of people who are poor. Has it changed or it is still the same, or the condition has adversed? So that you need to explain in this question. Students, if I talk about the poverty trends, then definitely it has declined. But let me tell you, even though it has declined to a great extent, but still the number of poor remains very high. The number of poor in our country, that is very high. And if I talk about the data, as you can see here, the data is given. If I talk from the year 1993 to 1994, in 1993 and 1994, the poverty ratio was 45%, but it came down to 37% in the year 2004-5. And after that, in the year 2009 and 10, it came down, it declined to 30% and gradually to 22% in the year 2011-12. This shows that poverty ratios, the poverty levels have declined. Definitely, this is a good indicator, it is a good sign. Now, let me talk about the number of people who are poor in millions. So you can see the data is given. If I talk about the year 1993 to 1994, the number was 404. That means 404 million people were poor. Now, if I talk about 2004 and 5, it went up to 407 million. That means it did not decline, it did not reduce. Rather, the number of poor people in our country increased in the year 2004-5. Now, let me talk about the year 2009 and 10. Again, it declined. It declined to 355 million. And in the year 2011-12, it again came down to 270 million people. But still 270, that is not a small number. It is a huge number, I would say. So, definitely poverty ratio and the number of people who are poor have declined gradually. But still it is an important or concerned issue. It is a challenge for us to completely eradicate poverty from our country. So this is about the poverty trends, about the ratios. So you need to remember the ratios, you need to remember the data. in order to write such answers. Alright. So, I hope this question is also clear to everybody. Now, students, let us move to the next question, that is question number 4th. So, question number 4th is, discuss the major reasons for poverty in India. So, I explained you a number of reasons while I was explaining you this topic. So, you need to write some of the reasons, that means the causes of poverty in our country. Students, if I talk about the reasons or the causes of poverty, then let me tell you that there are a number of reasons of widespread of poverty. The first point is low level of economic development under the British colonial administration. See, during that time, that means when Britishers were there in our country, then the economy couldn't develop much. Why the economy couldn't develop? Because of the policies of the Britishers, because of the policies of the colonial administrators, our economy couldn't develop. Why? Because during that time, there was a decline in traditional handicrafts, and Indian industries, they were also discouraged. Why they were discouraged? Because the Britishers, they dumped their machine based products from their country to our country, and as a result of which the demand for Indian industries, the demand for handicrafts, Indian handicrafts, they went down. So, if the demand will go down, then definitely the industries, the Indian industries, they will be affected. So, as a result of the policies of the British government, our industries, our cotton textile industry, basically if I talk about the textile industries, they were adversely affected, because the Britishers, because of the laws, because of the policies of the Britishers, the Indians were compelled to shut the industries, and handicrafts, handlooms, they were discouraged. So, this is one reason. Then second is, the fruits of Green Revolution was limited to, I am saying it again. Now, the second point. So, the second point is, the fruits of Green Revolution were limited to only some parts of our country. As I explained you about Green Revolution, in which high yield variety of seeds were used, modern methods were used to increase production of wheat, like fertilizers were used, manures were used, pesticides were used, modern tractors, modern way of irrigation were used. But let me tell you that all this was not used in the entire country. Only certain states like Haryana, Western Uttar Pradesh, Punjab, the farmers of those states, they only adopted this method, and as a result of which they became prosperous. And if I talk about the other states, then they couldn't adopt these measures. And if I talk about the other states, then the other states could not successfully implement this. For example, if I talk about Odisha, if I talk about Madhya Pradesh, Bihar, so the condition of those states were still the same. So, the fruits of Green Revolution, it was limited to some parts of the country only. It was not there in the entire country. So, this is also one reason of poverty, why poverty was there in other states. Some states grew prosperous while the other states were still the same. The next point is migration to cities and low level of living standard. See, the people living in the villages, they moved to cities in order to find work, because they couldn't, even though majority of population was engaged in agriculture, the primary sector, but from that also they couldn't become prosperous. That sector was not giving them sufficient yield, sufficient fruits. So, they moved to cities, they migrated to cities, and there also the industries failed to give them jobs, the industries failed to provide them jobs, and as a result of which what happened, they started working in unorganized sector, as a result of which there was low income, they had to do small jobs, and as a result of which what happened, they couldn't afford a better living standard, which automatically resulted in poverty. So this is one reason. Then the next reason is uneven distribution of land. That is also one reason, means there were several land reforms that were brought by the government after independence, but distribution of land was not even. In some states it was distributed very in an evenly manner, but in some states it was not done, as a result of which some states were prosperous and the others were not prosperous. Then the next point is huge income inequalities. The gap between the rich and the poor increased. Rich became richer and the poor became poorer. So this is one point of one reason for the cause of poverty. The next point is socio-cultural and economic factors. They also are responsible for poverty. For example, there are several rituals in our society that every person has to do, almost every person who is living in the society has to follow, whether the person is rich or poor. And if the person is poor, still that person has to follow that ritual, that ceremony in order to live in that society. And if the person is poor and he needs to follow that ritual, then he or she needs to take loan, and as a result of which what happens, that person falls in debt trap. So these are the important causes of poverty. So I hope this question is clear to everybody. So students, I hope till here all the questions are clear to everybody. In the next video, I will be explaining the further questions. Till then, thank you so much and do take very good care of yourselves. I'll meet you in the next video.